Welcome everyone that's dialed into this webinar today, and thank you for joining us. This is the one of the few webinars that Pitcher Partners have been putting together in this year, and today we're going to be covering the topic about the new digital landscape. And firstly, let me introduce to you Michael Tutek, founder and CEO of Prezi. Michael, welcome.
Hi, Terence. Thanks for having me, mate.
Listen, it'd be great to get a bit of background around who you are and where you come from, because I know who you are, but I imagine most of the people in the call might be meeting you for the first time.
Yeah, no stress. Yeah, so obviously, Michael, I am the founder, CEO of a company called Prezi. And Prezi is all about building technology that bridges the gap between the in-store and online experiences. So we are a Melbourne-based software as a service. We are a tech startup working with companies all around the world, but we specialize in, retail, e-commerce. Obviously, Terence, that's how we met, with our love of retail. And yeah, it all comes down to, the mission is to bridge the experience between the in-store and online experience.
Great, thanks. And yeah, absolutely. We met through our working together on our retail clients. And just really quickly for everyone on the call, I'm a director within the consulting practice, and I really lead up the strategy and digital area. And what we do is we actually we'll try and drive value into businesses around helping their growth and expansion, especially if they're looking to grow outside of Australia. And a lot of it is actually about using digital technology in the right way, especially about achieving strong commercial outcomes. So you're going to hear a lot of this on this topic between Michael and I during this conversation. And really, it might be good to give you guys a bit of context around how this webinar is really structured. It all started because Michael and I have a lot of discussions around this topic, and we figured, why not actually have this in front of a few people who might actually be interested in knowing. And lo and behold, Michael, I thought a few people would turn up. I think we've got over 100 participants. So let's keep it clean. Let's control the language. But nevertheless, I think you and I actually have some pretty good views to share. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, let's start. So firstly, I think the one thing that prompted this whole thing was that you and I came to this conversation going, the world's got into a bit of a digital overdrive, especially with this, especially with COVID. And to say the world is pivoted towards digital is probably an understatement at this stage.
Yeah.
And there's really been no choice, right? Everyone's got a website, but now I think the website and the digital channel has become far more important in today's sort of business. What have you seen? What do you think of it so far?
Yeah, I mean, over the last, 12, 18 months, I think the reality is we've seen businesses be forced to move digital. I mean, I'm not going to state the obvious, but the idea is all coming back down to online is not just a channel. Like, online is not just, a lot of businesses saw online as like their biggest store. If they're omni-channel, I've got 100 stores and online is my biggest store. And I think there's been like a mental shift to go, well, I've actually got like two limbs of my business. One is online, one is in store. And it's almost like a brain and a heart working together. So the online has become something that gets a lot more focus, a lot more thought. And I think further to that, what we've seen, at least at Prezi, is that, for those omni-channel brands, you almost, it's not as simple as, hey, you don't need online. It's actually, online requires in-store to thrive, and in-store requires online to thrive. So there's an element where, we actually saw a couple businesses that, even though they were predominantly online, when the world closed, their online businesses actually suffered because people got the word out through the store. People often visited the stores, but maybe purchased online. I mean, there's countless reasons. So the reality is, I think it's become more of a, hey, in the past, online was just like almost not a nice to have, but not a brain and a heart, conversation, where I think now it's literally, online is the brain and the in-store is the heart, or vice versa. At least that's what I've seen. Well, what about
Yeah.
yourself, Terence?
No,
Similar?
listen, if anything, I think it's a lot of parallels. I think one of the things that you and I talked about is that previously digital websites used to be brochureware, right? Put something up, talk a little bit about company, but then not do much else. But I think in this case, the there is the digital channel has become super important. And I think one of the sectors that maybe worth talking about is like you and I do a lot of work in with retail clients. And I found this really interesting chart that was actually released by Power Retail recently. And what I found interesting was that they actually mapped the amount, the value of e-commerce back in 2019 to 2020, and then based on what's happening around 2021 today. And if anything, one of the things that you and I might remember was that last year we were saying, "Oh wow, we're not sure if the end of the year Christmas period is going to be any good," but they had a bit of a smash over year, right? I mean, looking at
Yeah.
the red line, that's just gone way above even what 2019 was. But look at this, right? What's really interesting is that in 2021, we haven't really come into Christmas yet. And given the lockdowns we had in Victoria and New South Wales, online commerce is actually still speeding ahead. And there's every expectation that it's probably going to be even bigger than last year. So I think well and truly, the world's kind of gone through a bit of a step change, right? And retail, I know, is one of many sectors, but it's probably a really good indicator of like how everyone else is thinking about digital in this space. And the other thing which I thought was really interesting is that you and I talked about, well, what does it actually mean to be digital in this space? And even just looking at digital marketing, this stats came up from the IAB Australia that basically tracks digital advertising spend, which is only one of the few indicators. But what I found interesting is that when you look at the way to spend from classified, search, general display through the video, money is pouring into people trying to build brand, buy presence on the digital channel. And you know what's really fascinating? Video. I think going back 18 months ago, hardly anyone we talked about actually, would do much video, but now everyone's trying to get building up video on their website to try and stand out and to differentiate, right? I imagine you probably see the same things as well on your side.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in the end, I think you used the word step change. The reality is the world has become used to this. So, there are countless, and we all know those people who, wouldn't buy online. Just, I'm not willing to do it for whatever reason. They're now forced, and there's just an element where you're forced to do something. You become used to it. It becomes, kind of standard practice, normality. And I think the increase in video is interesting. And Terence, we were talking about this the other day, that I think that all comes down to, with COVID obviously being locked down, there is less, human interaction. So therefore, I think the idea that people are spending more on video makes a lot of sense, only from the fact that, in a video you get to see something. Most videos have people in them. So then all of a sudden there's that element of, personal touch, rather than, like, let's just call it a search ad where it's just text, very informal, nothing to it. Video can feel a lot more emotional, a lot more one-to-one. So
Yes.
at least I think that's part of why video's gone up. But it all comes down to the world is shifting.
Yep.
People are getting used to things that they weren't used to 12 months ago. And that's going to continue. It's going to be the standard normal practice moving forward.
Yeah, and I think there's got to be many different ways that people have options around where to invest and how to invest into digital for their business. It'd be good to actually run a poll, and we're going to actually run a really short poll now, which will actually look to understand from an audience perspective, what are your priorities around growth and expansion for digital at the moment? And really, we've kind of got answers which are going from improving digital infrastructure. So some clients that we work with, they have a website, but nothing in the back end, right? No e-commerce or nothing. And so for a lot of them, it's just that's a focus. Some of them are actually very focused on improving reach and presence through marketing. Others actually more about, you know what, we're actually already getting good leads and traffic. For us, it's just about optimizing and improving our customer acquisition and impact on sales. others, and I guess these are the ones that Michael, you and I get excited about. So the ones that
Yeah.
redesign and want to recreate new customer experiences, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later as well. And of course, there's a bit. I do a bit of everything. Right? You and I have seen clients like that, and for some of you, it might be nothing at all. So I guess for the people on the call, tell us a little bit about pick the one answer which you think actually reflects what you're looking at the moment.
It'd be very interesting to see where this sits. So I think as you mentioned, Terence, there's a couple there that probably where we hope most of the market's at. But there's nothing wrong with being late to the party. So it's fashionably late to the party.
No, absolutely not. So there you go. Infrastructure and a bit of everything at the moment.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think if it's for some of the companies that we've seen out there, I guess digital had never been given so much priority, and so it's quite understandable to see a lot of people who actually start to go, let's focus on infrastructure, and we'll cover a little bit of everything. But I think, Michael, this is probably the topic that we should probably go into a little bit more, right? Around what that means. And let me just
and I think from that it seems to me, and it's probably fair call, that the market is, most people are on there working on infrastructure, partly because before COVID, like we're saying, it wasn't a key element. It wasn't a major artery or major limb of the organization. So with COVID, all of a sudden it's become that. So if you don't have your infrastructure in place, or you can't handle the traffic, or you can't do click and collect or returns, you must activate that ASAP. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? For those of ones that actually have already had a sort of fairly robust sort of infrastructure, a lot of their thoughts are turning towards digital marketing and what I should be doing there. And this is where I think it got interesting, because you and I started talking about the advent of privacy and zero-party data. It might be worth pausing here a little bit just to talk about what this actually means. Michael, I think you had a pretty good view, which I thought was quite really simple of understanding it.
Yeah. So I think the best way to explain this is to kind of just keep it simple. The idea is not to go technical in this conversation, but everybody here, I'm sure, has seen an article about Google and Apple and how they're changing the game, and the death of third-party cookies and death of cookies in general. But I think the first thing to say is that Google, Apple, major tech companies, they see that consumers are looking at data privacy as a big thing. There is trust between any company, whether it's a retailer or Google, and a consumer or shopper is at an all-time low, because you don't know what they're using data for. So consumers are becoming aware, and they don't want to share their data. So Google and Apple in particular, they're basically just jumping on the bandwagon going, hey, we're going to support the users. We're going to support the end consumer. And that's when you start to look at things called zero party and third party. So I won't go into too much detail, just to understand that zero party and first party data is just another way of saying the data that I capture is from that original source. So let's say you're a retailer and you ask your consumers a handful of questions via a journey like Prezi, or via a survey. That's actually considered first party, meaning I've actually got that information from you. Now, third party is when you browse a bunch of websites and there are display ads and things like that. They're typically used for, display or advertising, where they're starting to capture information about you, really by you just searching. And that's called third party. It means that the data is captured from someone else who is a third party to you, and used in basically marketing and advertising. And that's where Google and Apple are basically opting out, or looking at killing third-party data. So the idea is that you get data direct. So that kind of clears up what that all means.
And listen, I think what you talked about as well, it's all based on a lot of this construct around cookies, right? Which really are simple ways to kind of track how people behave and so forth. And maybe just to add to what you just talked about before, I think if anyone on the call, I think actually most people on the call probably would have remembered um, Cambridge Analytica, and it might be worth just giving a bit of context around it, because one thing is digital marketing has always been about data, right? And the use of cookies has always been a really handy way to actually understand how consumers actually behave on your website. I think
Yeah.
what we're seeing around this whole discussion with privacy is that the way in which data is actually used, and Cambridge Analytica was just probably the worst example of that, where it was a company out there that had gained
Yeah.
access to a lot of personal data, little to no oversight by someone as large as Facebook. And this is the tricky part, I think, and this is one that's really come up to the surface. Users agreeing to the terms and conditions of actually using a website without actually really reading the terms and conditions. So there is a big shift that's going on. And I think it's probably important for the audience to understand the wave that's kind of coming through at the moment. But there are consequences around what it actually means for you to actually run an effective digital marketing function for your business and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess maybe this is probably a good segment to go into a topic that you and I are pretty passionate about, because I think this is the one thing which is going to be far more important for businesses moving forward, and that's really this concept of loyalty, right? I mean, Michael, what is your definition, or what's your views around
Yeah,
this
yeah.
topic?
So I think before, just one thing I wouldn't mind adding in terms of the cookies. It's pretty clear, or I would like to clear up that a lot of people look at cookies like a bad thing,
Mm,
except for like the chocolate chip ones. But aside from that, the reality is that cookies in themselves are not neither bad nor good. For what it's worth, guys, cookies are just something, a file that holds data. So third-party cookies are the ones that hold data from places you don't know, and first-party cookies are ones that hold data that talk about experiences. And that experience, obviously, in terms of fostering loyalty, which is what you're talking about, Terence, how do you foster loyalty if you don't know anything about anyone? It's near impossible. And that's where, having data and understanding what people are all about is important. So when it comes to fostering loyalty, and Terence, Preezi is all about bridging the gap between in-store and online. So I'm going to just take inspiration from there. I mean, when you go into, say JB Hi-Fi, and let's say you recently sold your house or you're moving into a new place, it's pretty common to go to JB Hi-Fi or Harvey Norman or wherever, and just start, buying a lot of, buying a lot of stuff. I need a new fridge, need a new TV. You might go back a few times. You'll probably speak to Jack or Sarah and you'll get to know them. It's pretty common that when you go to a Good Guys, you go back, you speak to the same sales assistant. Like I worked there a while back in a previous life. And if I sold you a fridge or TV, even though I wasn't an expert at ovens, you'd come to me and ask me about ovens. And that's loyalty, and that's how it's fostered in store. And someone will come in, I might know them, and I might say, "Oh, how was your son's soccer game?" or "How did you go with the move?" So that's
mm,
an example of how in store you hold information about somebody to basically foster loyalty, build relationships, and that's where I think the world is going to move online. It's actually about fostering that same loyalty or that same
mm,
relationship online, just like you would do in store. And obviously, you need to, one, be transparent, but you need to, obviously hold data and have data about someone. But in order to get that, you need to be trusted. So there is a like a kind of catch 22, a loop where you need to be a trusted source. And once you're a trusted source, then people will give you that data. Once you have that data, you can then foster loyalty and build amazing customer experiences.
mm. And yeah, absolutely. I think even like for us, the definition of loyalty has always been the ability to form a trusted relationship with your customer, right? Enabling a mutually beneficial outcome for all parties here. And this is important because it goes beyond the transaction. It's about knowing what is it that you do well and why people keep coming back to your business. And I mean, even in this image here, the hint is, it's not about the price, right? everyone sells a cup of coffee for $4 these days. So maybe after lockdown eases, it's probably going to be $5, $6, given
Yeah.
the way cost is going up. We've taken this view like, you know what, our clients, we understand we've worked with our clients for so long. We understand what their needs are. We also know the environment is changing a lot, in helping them arm themselves to have better capabilities around navigating as well, and incorporating the right ways to invest into digital in the business. That's really important, and that's part of why I hope a lot of our clients actually think about, as I say, a trusted advisor. But partly this is also what brought us to creating alliances with like companies itself, Michael, because I
Yeah.
think we see value in like business like yours, where you're constantly looking to say, we're at the edge, we're going to push forward, we want our clients and our customers to actually have new capabilities which allow them to compete far more effectively in what is probably going to be a really dynamic environment moving forward, right? And actually, we might even take another poll here, because this is quite a large topic. And so we've got a few questions here to kind of just help understand if, given this topic around loyalty and really talking about your customer and your client, because what are the focuses, or what is the focus if there was a priority around this topic? So for us, from what Michael and I've seen, a spectrum along the answers of, not much has changed in terms of what we've done before COVID hit, or some of them are now working on trying to understand them a bit better, doing more analysis to actually understand, are there natural segments or cohorts within their customer base. Others have actually moved on towards creating better experiences, and focus on improving sales. And I think, Michael, you and I have actually worked on clients who are pretty much in that space. And that's one of the reasons why we use the technology as well. Others, substantial changes in the customer experience design, and they're trying to shift towards really dealing with this concept of loyalty and what it actually means for their business. And on the extreme end, it's like a major redesign of every touch point, to really redefine what customer experience actually means across all channels. And I think, Michael, you and I are going to talk about the omni-channel concept as well after this.
Getting these results will be great, because we'll be able to change the conversation a little bit towards what people are feeling and thinking. But I think it'll be interesting to see how the world goes moving forward, because the reality is that in the past, the focus was on, just getting a website and getting traffic to it. So I think if you look at the, I guess, maturity of digital, probably 10, 15 years ago, it was like, just get a website, just get something up that allows someone to buy. Then I think in the last 6, 7 years, that's pretty kosher, even longer. Now we need to get traffic to it. So that's where you spend a lot of time on your ads. That's the rise of Google and Facebook. Now I think it'll be interesting, because I think we're moving towards a new dynamic where the future won't be just about advertising or getting people to your site. There will be a lot more focus on, hey, I want to get 1 million people here. I want to get 5% of them converting, and I want 50% of those 5% of people to come back. It'd be really interesting to see how we go moving forward.
And I do want to dive into it a bit more, but let's just see. Well, I think we're about 50, 60% again, and maybe let's kind of have a look at the results anyway. This is interesting. Creating better experiences and really focused on improving sales. That's
great to see.
It is. I think, if anything, the work you and I do is pretty much very much focused on this part, isn't it? Because I think you know what, it probably is I'm just gonna we might close that poll now. If anything, the situation with COVID has really kind of brought that to light, especially for businesses that generate a lot of revenues through physical channels or some sort of physical touch point. All of a sudden, digital became really important. So that is really consistent with what we're kind of seeing in terms of the clients and customers that we're working with. But let's move on to the future of engaging customers. It's really falls into kind of two broad topics, right? Building better omni-channel experiences and empowering customers. But Michael, what do we mean by building, better omni-channel experiences?
So I think this all goes down to, as I mentioned before, there is going to be the next 10 years, the businesses that win will be the businesses that actually build relationships or figure out how to build relationships with their shoppers online. Obviously, part of that is empowering, and part of that is to make the experience, omni-channel be the same thing. So, for example, these days, the companies that are performing the best, at least the omni-channel ones, when they do something in store, it's not, hey, I do something in store, there is no conversation with online. And when I do something online, there is no conversation with in store. It is literally one of the same. And the way I see it, we were talking the other day, Terence, said a lot of companies use the term sales and marketing. Why is the term sales and marketing being banded into one single, department? Obviously, you can be split out, but the idea is sales and marketing are two departments that work hand in hand together as a single unit to achieve a goal. And that's where I think businesses need to go in terms of omni-channel. It needs to be online and in store, are one single experience that work together, build projects out together, empower customers together. So a quick example of the empowering customers is simply put, like, just let them have control of the experience. When you go onto a website, I go on, Terence, you go on, my mum goes on, my partner goes on. It's typically the same for everyone. It doesn't ask you questions. It doesn't get to know you. It doesn't know you. The reality is the thing that knows you best is, when you go on to, another website that isn't retail and there's a creepy, ad there, that ad knows you better than the actual retailer, and that's the ironic part. So empowering customers is just about allowing them to feel control, allowing them to have a say, allowing when I go on that the experience is different to when, my partner goes on, because it understands, if I walk into a Good Guys, I will typically be, I'll have a little bit different experience to my partner or my mum or my, or a child. So the idea is to just understand and empower. And I think one thing to note here, Terence, is a lot of people hear this stuff and then they go, especially C-levels, they go, oh, this is a huge project, needs millions of dollars. My head of digital e-commerce told me they need, 12 months. The reality is that these experiences can be produced very, very quickly, and you can do them in isolation. So, Prezi, as a quick example, for those who don't know, you plug Prezi on a website, it asks you questions, provides recommendations. That's a way to empower customers, bridge the gap between online and in-store in bite chunks. So, getting to a full experience where in-store and online are one of the same is something that, if you're thinking about it in the right way, you can do bite chunks. So you could look at, hey, this, for example, I go on the website, I do something, I don't check out, I use Prezi, whatever, captures my email, sends me an email, lets me know where the local store is in case I want to buy that product in store, and gives me directions. That's something that doesn't take a lot of time. It's not millions of dollars. It can be done. There are tons of businesses like Prezi and like Pitch Partners that are out there to help. So I think the idea is, and I just stress it, this is not something that, it's too big to chew off. And I think that's a really clear distinction. People and businesses need to understand that there is so many quick little wins that you can put together and, bolt on for an overall amazing experience.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably worth me expanding a little bit on that, because that's one of the reasons why I think we've worked well together. Because the work that we do, we've actually gone in and said, you know what, there's a lot of information that you already have on hand, you don't actually realize. And we're able to actually go in and actually say, what does the customer actually breakdown look like? When they come into the different channels, what do they actually do? How do they behave? And being able to show a client a social customer is, X times more valuable than a direct customer or one that comes from referral. These are the reasons why. This is their behavior, and this is what actually comes to if you had an e-commerce site that actually purchased, you can actually get it down to a quantified level around who spends more than the other. And that was, like you said, a really simple thing to do. And that's one of the baseline things that we do when we actually go into a client. But the other thing in terms of why we actually started working with was that we needed a way to find more about what is it that a customer is actually thinking when they land on the site. What are they looking for? And just being able to unravel and get information about their decision-making process has been fantastic. And really using all that, which is really what I call customer insights analytics, that's really the best starting point around knowing how to empower your customers. Because if you don't understand your customers in a bit more detail, it's really hard to move on to this topic. Because ultimately, as you and I know, building better omni-channel experiences, empowering customers really leads to designing a customer experience that you want your customers, your clients to have. And part of this is actually, and this is probably where you and I got in some interesting discussions about this, personalized versus individualized experiences.
Yeah.
Is that worth maybe explaining to the people on the call what we mean by this and what the differences are?
It's really one of those things that in the past, personalization was meant to be, the white knight, the thing that saved e-commerce experiences, because everybody knows, it's no secret, everybody knows that that e-commerce experiences are commoditized. They are generic. They're the same for everyone. And personalization was meant to, save that. So if you go online, there's hundreds of personalization businesses. But the reality is personalization means one too many. So for example, if you go on and you find out that, hey, I'm a white male between 30 and 40, it's going to, hypothetically put me in a similar bucket to everybody else that's in that. So what you're doing is in personalization is you're creating personas or segments. Now, just being, being a human being about this, imagine you walked into a store like JB Hi-Fi, and let's just say they were completely transparent and they actually said, hey, Terence, you're 30 to 45-year-old with this kind of, we assume this income, so you go over there and you get treated that way. Hey, you're a 25-year-old or 18 to 25-year-old female, you get treated this way. So the idea is, you'd look at that and you'd go, how poorly committed is this experience? This experience has no idea. So that's personalization. Individualization is to kind of, almost bin the idea of personas to a certain extent and to just understand people at a one-to-one level and create an experience. So for example, I know that Terence is here because he's looking to buy a shaver or a razor for himself. He shaves every day or once a week. He's traditional. He doesn't like electronics. So let's start to understand what all those things mean, and then commit an experience to Terence. So just like you would in store, you say you walk in, you go, hey, I'm looking for a new TV. I just want the biggest TV I can get for the cheapest price, and then they know how you think, they know how to commit. Hey, they're showing you the Hisense that's, $2,000 at an 80-inch rather than the Sony that's $20,000 at 80-inch. So the idea is creating a one-to-one experience rather than just building buckets and plugging people into certain buckets. And the reality is it's a completely different way of thinking. It's going from, hey, I do personalization and I put people in buckets and personas because that's how I know, that's what I've been told, that's what the technology out there does. But the reality is you can go deeper, and it's just about committing yourself and the organization to going, hey, I want to think like that and I want to provide that experience. So now I'm going to go out and find all the suppliers or the staff or the partners that can think like that and want to create experiences that are aligned to, a one-to-one rather than a one-to-many.
And listen, if anything, right, to be fair to the thinking that's happened in the past, I think it's great a lot of people have actually used, well, and if it's driven by a technology platform data, just understanding concept personas and actually designing like a sort of semi-customized experience for the persona. That's a good start. I guess, what you and I see is like, it needs to go a lot further if you want this to differentiate for your business. I mean, for example, in a previous life, I've seen a lot of work that banks have done around personas. And to be honest with you, all the banks have the same personas, right? It's whether you go to pick any of the big four banks, you'll fall into one of their many buckets of personas. And chances are the competing bank probably has the same view of you as well. So when you have that kind of view, how are you actually meant to differentiate, right? And I think this is really why it came down to this whole individualized experience. And I guess my nuance on top of your view is that this actually still needs to come back to your business and how well you know what you provide to your customers, that value proposition. What is it that makes them want to interact, engage, and buy from you, right? Whatever it is you're doing, whether it's a product or service. And partly, I think there's a lot of thinking and a lot of technology that's in terms of technology options that it's building out there to help understand it. But part of it is actually having the thinking to determine what is it that we want to actually understand about our customers that allows us to actually head down this path of creating more individualized experiences. How can I make it a bit different? Because everyone's building up, right? I mean, we saw at the start of this chat, everyone's putting a lot of money into digital marketing. Everyone knows the concept of personas and customer experience. So if everyone's got the same basic starting point, what do you have to do to actually make it different, and how do you make your brand and your company stand out?
And that's actually the beauty, because if every brand created an individual experience or individualized experience with individualized tech, the great part is that because your experience will be individualized, the reality is it won't overlap with others, so the reality is the way in the experience you get on, Good Guys will be different to Harvey Norman or whatever, because yes, they're similar, but they might treat people differently. They have different processes. They target different different markets. So the idea is, you cannot beat a one-to-one experience. And I think the idea is that, I actually spoke to the digital lead of one of the biggest websites in the world, and I was saying to him, with your website, he was telling me the website knows everything. It's AI, it's this, it knows that you're about to make a coffee and that, you've got a webinar at 12 o'clock. And I just said, fair enough, but I don't feel any of that when I go on there. And when you go on there, you don't feel any of it, because it's all behind the scenes. And that's something that we actually work a lot with. For those who don't know it, in behavioral psychology, there is something that's called positive flow of information. And what it means is that when you're transparent and you're clear and you explain to someone why you're showing them something, why this might be better for them, there's automatic trust there that is built. So for example, Terence, let's just say I had a product recommendation system that knew all about you, and I just said, hey, this is the right razor for you. You may or may not believe it because you don't know where it came from. Why are you showing me that? But let's say you answered a few questions, or even if I just said, hey, Terence, based on X, Y, and Z, we believe this is the best one for you. You are, from what I've seen studies wise, you are more than twice as likely to buy and click, because it's being transparent. So half of this is customers have the data, they just don't know how to use it. And the reality is you don't have to overcomplicate it. You don't need a room full of machine learning servers. You just need to be human and think about it from a psychological point of view.
Absolutely. The clients that I think who have really successful businesses, it's not because they have the best tech. Yes, tech helps enable, but they're actually really clear about their value proposition to the customer, right? And I think that's one of the fundamental things that's probably worth reminding everyone on this call and everyone out there in the business side of things. Before we head into the next part, which is around QA, I guess maybe what do you think? We covered a lot of things today. What will be some of your key takeaways anyway for people on this call?
Yeah, I think in terms of key takeaways, I think firstly is just start thinking, or at least have the thought logic that in-store and online, for those who are omni-channel, are one of the same thing. It's a head and a heart of a business. You just won't believe how much your in-store is impacted by your online, vice versa. So I think the first thing is give online the effort and mental thought logic it needs to be side by side with in-store. And then I think aside from that is just start having the conversations like these to get these experiences going. They are not huge projects. You don't need to have just implemented a brand new, fresh Salesforce Commerce Cloud implementation to do these things. There are a lot of technology, CDPs, Prezies of the world, product recs, as well as partners like you guys that understand it. So I think the idea is that these aren't huge projects. Don't think of them like, oh, I can only do this in December 2022 when this re-platform's done, because the reality is you just won't do it. You'll never do it. And the brands that do, they will take you over. And I think lastly is over the next 10 years, the brands that win will be the brands that focus on customer experience rather than marketing. Now, don't get me wrong, I know you need marketing. I love marketing, but the reality is that getting customers to your site will become second to when a customer hits your site or your store. The experience is supreme. It combines with in-store and online. It knows you, it understands you, it provides you the systems and the recommendations and the individuality that you need. So I think that, for those who are seriously thinking about moving forward, like, you need to be thinking like that. Otherwise, I think you'll regret it in 10 years' time.
Yeah. And listen, you and I, we share the same views, and I guess the only additions I probably make on top of them, the other key takeaways is, don't let digital. We've obviously, this topic has been all about digital, but really, digital should be led by where you want to go with your business, and ultimately, that's from a business strategy point of view, right? For us, it's actually about building the alignment between what do you want to do for your business and how is digital actually meant to help try and get there. And for us, one of the things that we found to be really useful for clients who either feel like there's too much going on or we're not sure where to start. 3 really simple things, right, that we do with clients. And I think if anything, go back and have a look at whether you have this in today. Set sort of digital roadmap, right? Really understand where your investment is going into digital and why, right? What is it actually doing? And from there, you can see that it's actually just beyond technology, but also making sure that you have the right capabilities in your team, knowing who should do what. Currently working with a client now who actually is, and this will be music to your ears, Michael, it's actually, they don't actually have a sales and a marketing function. They're kind of integrated whole into, like, this is now our customer experience and marketing, sales and marketing team. And really, they're now focused on what is it that's actually important from social and what are we doing there across all different channels. Now, that's how they think about it, but at least they're clear around what
that's
doing.
right.
Yeah, and people are now in their business now actually allocated specific parts around that. And the other thing that we actually set on top is always measure and make sure that you're actually achieving tangible commercial outcomes. And the technology that you built actually really helps achieve that. And we've actually been able to help build that capability into our clients. So really, that's really the best kind of outcomes we've seen so far when it comes to investment into digital technology.
Yep.
But you know what? That's probably quite a lot of the takeaways for the audience today. This has been a great chat. Should we see what kind of questions have popped up in the Q&A?
Yeah. Let's go to Q&A.
So here's one which we haven't really done much around customer experience and loyalty. What tips do you have on starting? What do you reckon, Michael?
I think first it's just what you said, understanding what you want to achieve. It's about going, first, like, are you omni-channel? Are you, pure play online? And then going, like, what do you want to achieve? And you can have both intangible and tangible metrics. So you might say, hey, I want to achieve, a better customer experience in terms of loyalty. And then you go, cool. So, what's your, X, like, let's call 20% of your customers return now within 30 days. I want to lift that to 40%. Cool. My conversion rate on my website is 3%. I want to lift that to 6%. Okay, let's look at that. So the idea is, I think, firstly, understand it holistically, like you said, and then get down into metrics. And then from there, just start having a conversation with people like yourself or myself to understand, what are the quick wins. The reality is getting conversion rates, say from 2 to 3, or from 3 to 6 or whatever, is a massive job. And there'll be heaps of little, block-sized chunks that you can do to kind of win there.
Listen, that as well. the experience that we've had, since we've been started working together is conversion rate, even on that topic alone, is actually that's actually not as difficult as it may seem sometimes. And really, the work that we've done with you guys is once you really understand your customer and what they're actually asking, what they're looking for, it's actually quite easy to kind of go hone in on, oh, okay, these are the more important aspects around how to actually understand a particular product feature or a particular service feature that they want, and going through a simple way of like saying, if we cover these aspects, this is more than likely what you're looking for. And being able to do that for some of our retail clients to be able to help customers find the right products they're looking for very quickly, that has actually made a big impact, even just in the conversion rate alone, right? So
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
that's yeah, I mean, simple things like coming back to the question, pick something which you think is really important and valuable, and then explore ways in which you can actually really lever up on that. And in some cases, right, if you need help, that's when the trusted advisor comes into it. And that's probably one, that's probably a tip that Michael would have for that.
Yep.
What are the steps to understanding what your customers want? Is it just a process of looking at what would happen in store and then reflecting this online?
That's a good question. Yeah. So um, with this, it's really important to distinguish what people actually looking for versus what people buy. So, for example, Zara. We all know Zara. One of the quotes from the founder of that was, "I figured out what customers wanted today and got it into the store 4 weeks later." So he was kind of all about figuring out what people wanted before they had it. So why I say that is a lot of businesses look at, hey, people are buying this, people are searching this, therefore that's what they want. But the reality is that's what they can find from your range. So let's say the best product for them was actually just hidden in the bottom left-hand corner out of your 10,000 products you wouldn't know. So the steps to understanding what your customers want, I think, to be honest, I think it's about asking um, rather than like just straight up observing. So, for example, if I go onto a website, and I use this example all the time, and I'll just go JB Hi-Fi again. Like I'm searching, I might, browse the 10 grand TV. I might click at it because, I'm a dreamer. One day I want to buy a 10 grand, 100-inch TV. I can't. But then if I was to say use the Prezi workflow or some other means, I would end up, basically saying how I'm looking for a TV like this, that I want this. So I think part of it is asking, and, obviously through ways like tech like us and other tech, you can find ways to ask people within the journey. So therefore it's completely non-invasive. And yes, you can do it in store. So I think it's a combination of asking people as well as observing. So I'll give one simple example. I had one customer who they were very big into asking, shoe sizes in a certain way, like, European this or whatever. And we said to them, why don't you ask and figure out what people want? And they found out that, certain people, a big percentage of their audience wanted to refer to shoe sizes in the, UK or Aussie or US. Therefore, then they're learning that, hey, to give a good experience, we need to show sizes in this, or, more women have, like Oz Hair and Beauty, we work with those guys and they figured out things like, what concerns are most popular and what products they have that don't match their range. So I think part of it is just ask, like find clever ways to ask, and then just document it in a structured way, and then take that information and change things. It could be navigation, it could be promotions, it could be product inventory, it could be a bunch of different things.
Yeah, and listen, if anything, Katie, just building on Michael's point, I think it really depends on the sector. I can point towards two examples. Everything Michael talked about, we saw that reflected in a retail client, which is interesting enough, going to and observing in store and actually talking to some of the salespeople, that reveals a lot about their understanding of what customers want. And especially if you have a business where you have people on the front line that are constantly engaging and talking to customers, they're usually a really good starting point, right? They'll be able to tell you stuff which they observe, seen, and heard, to the point where they say, we have one retail client said, in this particular store, two out of three customers that walk in always come with the phone saying, "Hey, I saw this on Instagram. I want this," right? And that's an insight in itself. Other sectors, for example, I've worked with an aged care sector where the process of actually getting from evaluating where you should send your loved one into an aged care center through to actually get them in, it's a really complicated, long process. And until you actually understand that and actually interview the clients that actually gone through the process, not only will you understand what their needs and wants are, but you can also understand a lot of their pain points. And really, this comes down to a variety of different ways. We haven't even really talked about analytics, but if you actually collect a lot of data, even using that as a starting point, is a really good start. But coming back to what Michael said, if you only collect information that's related to a particular product range or what you look at, the insights out of that in terms of understanding what a customer wants could be limited. You might get lucky, but ultimately you need to complement it with a bit of qualitative research as well. And listen, at the end of the day, digital marketing is really a bit of art and science, right? You have to actually decide where you should put your efforts to get you the most amount of value, and that's how you should think about that approach.
Yeah.
We've probably got time for one more question. All this sounds a bit full on. How should we start thinking about if we want to start moving our business forward, in this topic of space, right? So that's a big one, Michael. I think it depends.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I think kind of similar to the theme we had before, which is don't overcomplicate it. Don't I mean, I'll give you an example. If you were inexperienced in building a house and someone said that you had to build a house from scratch, you'd struggle very, very hard. It'd just be an impossible task. But if someone just said, hey, there is a house and right now I just want you to, lay some foundations. Oh, cool. I'll talk to the guys that do that. I'll talk, I'll get the concrete laid and get the Rio in or whatever. So it all comes down to just think about like what you want to do. Hey, I want to build a house for a family of 5. I want to build an experience that is individualized, that allows me to do this, that, combines in-store and online, and then go, cool, what is the first chunk? Now, you may or may not know what that is. Part of that is, to be honest, Terence, I would say just reach out to someone like you and go, hey, I want to build this house, or I want to build this experience. These are all the things we want to achieve, and speak to someone like yourself, Terence, and go like, what do I do? Where do I start? Because like there are literally hundreds and thousands of softwares, hundreds of thousands of different ways. Where should I start? And, the reality is, you kind of take it from there. So I think mentally just think about it like, you don't need to do everything at once. It doesn't need to be a 5-year massive $1 million project. Just think holistically what you want to achieve, and then take it to, if you don't know internally, take it to someone like you and go, hey, how do I cut this down to bite-sized chunks?
Absolutely. And I think just to maybe even really emphasize one of the key points you made, Marcus, even go to someone who you trust, right? Go to someone who actually cares and knows about your business. And that's a very natural starting point, right? And obviously every business owner will be in different sort of situations, so forth. And if you're finding like you're needing that fresh perspective, absolutely come drop me and Michael a bell, right? I mean, that's essentially our business. We're looking at helping our clients understand what are all the different ways they should be looking at a problem and how they should actually look to understand what is value and where to prioritize it. And partly, we're constantly trying to build an understanding of how to help clients, especially in the digital space, which is one of the reasons why we actually partner with Michael and his company, because which we find experts in particular areas say, oh, this is actually amazing. There's a lot in terms of the philosophy and the culture, the way we work, and we bring that through into all our clients. But ultimately, it comes back to finding someone you trust first, and someone who really understands your business, or actually makes the time to really understand your business, so they can really start to help. I mean, the times that when Michael and I start to work together, amount of time we actually spend understanding clients' business first before we actually implement a lot of solutions. That's probably a key part to our success as well. And listen, if you don't have anyone like that, obviously, you've got our contact details of Michael and I. Reach out if when the time is right for you guys. Okay. I think that's pretty much on time.
Yeah.
Michael, that's been a fantastic discussion. Thank you again for making the time.
Thanks
Always a
for having me,
pleasure to
Terence.
talk.
Appreciate it.
Oh, no
Hopefully,
worries.
hopefully there's some good value there for the audience.
Yes, hopefully. Otherwise, let's make sure we line up the next one again. Okay.
No worries. All right. Well,
All right.
thanks, Terence. Really appreciate it.
No worries. All right, everyone. Thank you for making the time. Like I said before, a recording of this will be sent out a few days after this. If you're interested in like replaying anything or sending it to someone who you think might get some value out of this discussion. Thank you for your time again. And listen, look forward to everyone having a drink somewhere in a few days' time, assuming the lockdown plans stay on track. Otherwise, take care, stay safe. See you, everyone.